Well, for me, that's the most effective part, the sacrifice, the sacrificial aspect of Christ.
It is unlike any other story that gets told.
What could be the most painful thing? To lose your child, to see your son, your child suffering.
How do you go through that and even survive halfway through this, you know?
Jesus' death and crucifixion was not a pretty sight.
This film represents that. It represents a sacrifice, represents the suffering of our Lord, how much he does love us.
It's those little glimpses you get that sort of says, okay, there's something big out there.
This is going to be such a strong and courageous project.
I want people to understand the reality of the story. I want them to be taken through an experience. I want them to feel. This is the ultimate hero story for all mankind. He suffered, died, and he still won.
I can remember talking to Mel when we first started Icon, and we were talking about material, and Mel was talking about the Bible. So that's got to be over 15 years ago when he first mentioned the Bible as a source of material for film.
You know, around about when we were soldiers, Mel would march off the set and stand over and look back at it, what he'd just done, and turn to me and say, we have to do the Passion. And then he'd walk off and go on for take two. Passion, what? Okay. Well, we'll look into it, and, you know, it just started that way.
It was my own personal meditation. I focused on the Passion because I found it healing for me. Because, like most of us, I mean, you get to a point in your life where you're pretty wounded by everything that goes on around you. By your own transgressions, by other people's, you know, I mean, just life is it's a kind of a scarring thing. If you're wounded in life, I use the wounds of Christ to heal myself, and it works.
I didn't quite get it at first. I didn't know exactly what he was talking about when he wanted to do the Passion. I didn't quite see the movie there, but it wasn't like he came out and said, I have to do this movie right now, let's go. He fed it out, you know, he just kind of mentioned it. You know, I'd like to do this movie about the Passion. It took him several months before it dawned on me that he really wants to do this movie, and we better make it happen.
Mel wanted to shoot in Aramaic and Latin. When Mel was first asked about that, he said words to the effect, I may be an idiot, but I may be a genius. And the latter certainly applied.
Man ba'ayin.
אנחנו באים, ישוע מנצרת.
أنا هو.
I wanted to find out about it in a complete way, in a full way, and I began to read and investigate. We were in the middle of our very first meeting, and it was in this nowhere place in, like, Central California, sitting on a sidewalk cafe, and this French woman just came up from nowhere, and she says, I want to say something, but I don't know if, is it all right if I say this? And we're like, what? What is it? And she said, Jesus loves you. Can I say this? And we just kind of looked at her and went, okay. It was just one of those things, you know. She didn't know what we were talking about. So it's like those little signals were everywhere. I used various source material, but mainly the Gospels. The process was one of just, it started off very full and very, very thick, and then we just kind of like kept paring it down because there was so much material with the Dolorous Passion that was very dense. You could get caught in detail. Although the detail is wonderful and it's great background and foundation material, you don't need to display every aspect of it. That would become tiresome. We mainly just use it as a backdrop. So it was just a question of refining. I've seen so many films where they do focus on those other areas, and they get kind of long and drawn out, and I don't think that the renderings that I've seen, they're not very successful. It's like looking at the story through the wrong end of a telescope. It's like far away. It's as if it isn't real. It's like it's a fairy tale or something. And I wanted to accentuate the reality and have it not be a fairy tale, but have it be real, as I believe that it is and was.
He shows me this picture in one of these movie magazines. This little picture of this actor. He goes, you know, there's only one American I can think of that could play this role. It was a little picture of Caviezel, Jim Caviezel. And I honestly didn't even know who Jim was at the time.
He's got some other world or unworldly knowledge that seems to envelop him like a glow. And that very presence, I thought, was a key thing. His casting in that is somebody who emits that kind of light, and he has a very good light coming out of him.
Came to me about 6 months before Mel Gibson did and said, you know, I think you'll be playing Jesus. I said, well, that's kind of an odd statement. And he says, yeah, well. And then 6 months went by, and I got a phone call that Steve McAvity wanted to meet with me on a movie called Mavericks.
So I tell Mel, so come with me and we'll meet this guy about the surfing movie. Jim pulls up and he gets out of the car and he kind of strolls over to us real slowly, and he sits down and he's kind of nervous and he doesn't really know what the heck he's doing there, and all of a sudden there's Mel Gibson there, and he wasn't expecting that. And he doesn't say anything. All of a sudden he says,
you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he says, well, yeah. And I said, okay.
I look at Mel, and Mel looks at me and goes, okay. Wow, that's weird. I remember, we hadn't told anybody about this movie. Mel goes, he's just innocent. He's perfect. He's just perfect. Go, all right, I don't know what planet I'm on, but okay, I'll go with you on this. So we sat there for 2 hours and talked about everything under the sun. And Mel called him the next day at his house and said, hey, you want to play Jesus? I said, I thought that's why I was there.
And he says, are you sure you want to play Jesus? He goes, it's almost as if he was trying to give me an out. He said, he goes, you know, if I were you, I was your age, I don't even think I'd want to play it.
I was asked myself to do it, 15 years ago. No way I was touching it. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have pulled it off.
And I said, well, you got your job, I've got mine. And I said, we're not called to the easy life. You either carry your cross or you'll be crushed under the weight of it. And I really believe that. So I said, okay. And I called my agent up and I said, Mel Gibson just called, and I don't know if he's really serious or not, and boy, he sure was. As soon as I said yes, just took off, and it's been more than I ever dreamed.
At the time that the story actually took place, it reeks and eeks and oozes culture, history, and souls, and spirituality, So for me, it was a great source to draw from. It also reeks of evil, too. It's got everything going on. It's the full smorgasbord. One senses a real realm, sort of a battle of the big realms, sort of slugging it out there. But at the same time, you can see this goodness there. We did the route, this kind of cartel of location people in the usual, Morocco or Tunisia and all these various places. So I sort of looked at those, and some of those settings were okay, but and in fact, there's beautiful places, but they're used in every Bible movie, and they kind of all end up looking the same because of that. And so that we were very fortunate to come across location people from Italy who knew of this town in Basilicata called Matera. I mean, it was like rich, and we looked at it so many times and remapped it and walked it and looked at it and had old cameras on it. I did a lot of location scouts there just to understand it, to understand the place and the best way to use it.
You know, it's a 2,000-year-old city. It was everything you could dream of. And then across the canyon, we had, you know, the perfect mountaintop for Golgotha that overlooked this 2,000-year-old city. Why no one else has really taken advantage of this place before, I don't know. But it hasn't been adequately shot.
Do it again here. Is you still see him? Good. Do it again, do it again.
It was really a remarkable location. And then Francesca Friggeri, who was a production designer, did an absolutely amazing job building Jerusalem on the back lot at Cinecittà. And that tied together perfectly with what we did in Matera.
Here we have mixed together the Matera shooting and what we have built inside the Cinecittà, all the backlot and the scene that we have built in Cinecittà.
Of course, whenever you see something like that for the first time, it's sort of, it did strike me, yes. I thought it was like extraordinary. Still in all, when it was finished and done and had the necessary patina thrown across it and it sort of looked real and happening, I was staggered by it. I had an idea of what I wanted. I know the walls of actual Jerusalem in those days were higher than this. They were like twice as high as this. These are only 35 feet high, but they were even higher than that. They were close to 90 feet high. They were big walls, but this gives the impression of that. And it certainly looks grand, you know, on film. There's a huge talent pool over in Italy in film production, design, costume design, makeup. These people are craftsmen. They've been at it for a long time, and they pay meticulous attention to details. The costume designer is made this thing really breathe. You could practically smell these people. They were all distressed, and nobody was clean. You know, it was just a stench of reality about the whole thing. Right down to, you know, the beards that they played. They didn't look like phony Bible bad wigs and all this kind of stuff. Either people had their real hair, or they had very good wigs and beards. Jim had his beard applied every day by a guy in pieces. It wasn't like just some slap-on beard. He used to actually layer it on with just hair that he had, and he'd put it on there every day like that. And it looked real. I looked at it and I said, wow, that's the best beard I've ever seen. And he's like, yeah, well, I did it myself. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, pal, yeah, sure, you slapped a little jam on the guy's chin and whacked on the rug, you're right? And it's like, no, he put it on in layers, like with hair. And it was kind of a staggering achievement. You think, well, it's kind of like doing a haircut in reverse. That's almost impossible. That's like shoving a toothpaste back in a tube, you know?
Mary and Magdalene and John are watching the flagellation going on, and Mel is playing all the parts in the background.
I worked with Caleb once before. We worked on The Patriot, and I noticed that when I watched the dailies, that it was like exceptional work, even rough. You know, just the dailies come in, and he'd say, it's printed too hot or it's printed too cold or something like that. But still, it's unmistakable. When you see the work of a master, it's unmistakable, no matter how they treat it. We looked at paintings, Caravaggio's and Mantegna's and a bunch of other artists. But Caravaggio, to me, sort of gets it because his things almost move. The lighting in them is not realistic at all, but it has very saucy and very, like, almost filmic in a very dramatic way, contrasty.
You can draw upon 2,000 years of great art. I spent a lot of time in Rome when we were prepping, just going around to every museum, every church, every possible source I could find of any kind of art having to do with the life of Christ. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure in some way, some conscious way, all those things influenced, things that we ended up doing.
And he just looked at it and he went, okay, no sweat. And I looked at it the first day and he said, wow, that's just amazing. That looks just like a moving Caravaggio. And he said, well, that's what you wanted, isn't it? I said,
Caleb's a great man, fun man, crazy. When he goes to work, nothing gets in his way. He goes for it, and I love that about him.
the special effects are nothing short of brilliant. I've never seen anything quite like them. You don't know that they're special effects. That's how good they are. You don't know.
Jim will be laying on the cross with his real arm down in this hole. And this is going to butt up to his wrist. This will be a mechanical thumb and someone else's fingers, keeping the fingers alive. And this will be hidden with the ropes that hold his wrist down. And then when we go do the effect, the spike will go in, and there's a blood tube down here, which is kind of pressurize the tube with blood. As the nail goes down, blood's going to come out this way. With a forced perspective, you can't tell how long the hand is at all.
We were shooting on a cliff while I was hanging on the cross, and the wind would travel down the ravine of this, like a canyon, and it would shoot up right over. And when you're looking out at people and they're shaking and they've got scarves and heavy coats on, and you're sitting up there in a loincloth, it's just excruciating.
Oh, he suffered up there. He really suffered. I mean, to begin with, the poor guy had to get up at 2 a.m. and then start getting like airplane glue put all over his body, and then they had to glue prosthetic pieces all over him. And it was a very long, arduous process, and he had to exercise great patience. And then he was working all day. He was freezing out there. He was up on this thing. His arm was like, he had trouble with a bad shoulder. It was all ripped out. It was, the guy, he paid in full.
Lift your head forward, Jim. Pasión! Algunas! Cinere!
And he never complained much. Every now and then he says, oh man, can you guys hurry up? Poor guy. Because you forgot about him, He's up there dying, really, literally. Long days for Jim.
It got really quiet, like a eerie silence, and I knew it. I said, I'm going to get struck by lightning. And sure enough, I felt as though somebody took their hands and slapped them against my ears, and I saw what appeared to me was like a pink static color for about 7-8 seconds. But the moment it hit, I heard people scream, and a couple guys before me grabbed the ground. And what they saw was like fire coming out of the right and left side of my head. And I looked like I went to see Don King's hairstylist.
The passion kind of took a life of its own. No matter how well you planned to do something, something would take the passion the way it wanted to go.
In Hollywood or in the United States, to do a film in a so strange and so far language. But I think it's interesting exactly because it tries to find the atmosphere that a language can give to a situation. And because I think that the languages are not only sounds, but they say something about the culture in which they are spoken.
It requires something different from the actors in performance. They have to compensate and be very clear, more than normal.
The time that I needed was to work with the actors, because they had to read the first time. Some of them were afraid, do I have to say these words? But I succeeded in conquistarli. Testimonium veritatis, perché?
My bad. Ego and hope not too soon.
But that wasn't the only criterion. I mean, not only did they have to have a musical ear for the dialect and the language, they also had to be interesting to look at, and have the goods as far as acting went, to have the chops. I relied very heavily on my casting lady, a woman called Shyla Rubin, she just knows where everybody is. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have found Maya Morgenstern. She knew where she was hiding up in Romania. She said, I knew this woman. Perhaps you'd like to have. I said, okay. So we looked at a tape of her, and of course, one look at a close-up of this woman, and I knew she was perfect. Like, I immediately knew.
Marianne, my Taiki.
She was oozing volumes of wonderful stuff, and she was utterly watchable. You drown in her eyes, you know.
Mary, for me, it's not just a character, a picture, or just a dry idea. It's a way of living. It's a way of suffering and maybe being above pains, above your personal sufferances, and to turn your big pain into love.
I liked the idea to play Mary Magdalene because for me she's so human, and I like to think that she was a sinner, not because she was a prostitute, but rather because she was into material things. And when Jesus saves her, it's like if he makes her aware of her own worth as a human being. And for the first time, a man looked at her in a different way.
Well, Monica Bellucci is beautiful. She's a great Mary Magdalene. She has a real strength to her character. There are scenes in the movie where she is staring at Christ on the cross and the wind is blowing in her hair. It takes your breath away in the emotion that you feel for that. And she's great to look at through the camera, too.
She's a very good actress. And she hardly says a word in the whole thing. She hardly says a word. But she's not afraid. She's just not afraid to look filthy and dirty and beat up and, you know, crying. And it was awful because we were messing her up. I said, more dirt. Put more dirt on her. More tear streaks. Mess her hair up. You couldn't, the messier she got, it was like the better looking she got. It was like, you couldn't make her look bad, and we were trying to make her look bad. So she's one of those rare creatures that, and I said to her one day, I said, we can't make you look bad. We're trying to mess you up. She said, how's this? She's like, you know, putting dirt on. It's like, couldn't do it.
Cut! Reset!
Antun maha amanindi. Atenda undi ehwe ana arth. Koste.
Peter, Judas, and John, the displayed disciples in this case, these guys just jump right out at you. Francesco as Peter was like perfect. I just took one look at him and I knew he was the guy.
This movie and this character are changing my life, and maybe my faith is more strong, especially with Judas and with John. We will talk about the faith on the set, obviously, but also in our life.
You know, with Judas, I wanted to feel sorry for him because I always felt sorry for him. You know, he kills himself through despair. I mean, this is awful. And this guy, Luca, felt sympathetic for him for some reason. I always imagined that, you know, if evil were going to be personified, it would be in a form that was attractive or at least dynamic.
I am the devil.
And Rosalinda is both. She's kind of like this symmetrical looking woman. She's kind of masculine, but she has this symmetry of her face, and her eyes are beautiful. Then we put a man's voice in her. I mean, it makes it a little weird. You're the only person in this film that sees Rosalinda. Nobody else ever sees her except you. see her. And she knows you see her. It's really scary. I think it's great. And then finally, when you really start boring holes in her, she disappears behind some people and we lose her. It's great. But that's the thing. If you're going to personify evil, it shouldn't come to you in a form that's going to scare you. It's got to be in a form that's kind of magnetic. And you kind of look at it and you're like, wow, that's kind of, and she does, she looks like that, but you know there's something wrong.
Laithai. Anashtikar. Lakaimar. Yakir Sagi. Yakar Pidion Marsha. Laithai. Anashtikar. La. Laithai.
Papa. Kulet
Jesus, people walk up to me and start calling me Jesus and start calling me Belezimo Jesus, Jesu, and they would get on their knees. That was bizarre. Number one, I'm not Jesus, I'm just playing a role, but they couldn't see the difference. I did everything that I always do as an actor. I treat it as a role, I just look at it. And then as time goes on, it couldn't just be another role.
Why do you search for the living among the dead?
The only thing that was going to give me strength is prayer. I had to go to it.
It's the first time I've ever seen a production with this subject matter where the guy looks like he's actually going through some sort of agony. He does it with a modicum of forbearance and heroism, but you still know that it hurts him. It's really well measured out. He didn't really put a foot wrong here.
Even in the film, when you see Jesus with the mother, it's there to show the human side. This is a human Christ as well as God. The other part of it is you do feel guilty when you complain, because it is a gift to play this. It is a privilege to play our Lord. And so I can't forget that.
Usted está viendo The Making of, cómo se hizo la Pasión de Cristo por Venevision.
The donkeys want to play with you.
Yeah? Oh, no.
The donkeys want to give you a ride.
Thank you, sir.
3 of the donkeys want to give you a ride.
At least.
3.
Not
Just only 3.
everybody.
We happy donkeys.
No globalization.
This was different for Mel than any other film that he's directed because he wasn't starring in the film. And so that allowed him to channel his creativity into just one arena.
Braveheart stood him in good stead to do this film. Mel's risen to the challenge. The bar has been raised higher once again. Proved the genius of the man and pulled it off.
I mean, you're working in another country with people who speak another language.
Nobody understands me.
You're missing that step of communication, instant communication. You're going to depend on interpreters and stuff like that. So it's kind of frustrating. Everything takes a little longer.
I need a translator.
Oh, you were...
Non andare dietro.
Sometimes it's better not to have communication with everybody. In a way, that's a pain in the neck as well, so that there's a kind of a barrier almost works for you somehow.
I know it's tempting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go to sleep. I'm nearly there myself.
Lo so che alle 3 del pomeriggio uno è tentato ad andare a dormire. Anche lui ha sonno.
But don't fail me now. You've been so great up till now. Keep it up.
Ma fino adesso siete stati favolosi, quindi coraggio!
Okay, thanks.
As far as just directing the film, it's probably about the hardest gig I've ever done in my life. And it wasn't as big as Braveheart with all the horses and people and stuff, but there were more precise things that had to happen. And there was the natural calamities that afflict all of us. And sometimes you get a real dose of those.
Now we have these signs. Do you see these signs? Vedete questi cartelli che abbiamo qua giù, che abbiamo fatto? Hold up one of them.
Uno alla volta.
Okay, do that one.
Every sequence was definitely difficult to get, and difficult to get the way you wanted to get it so that you really experienced it, so you felt like you were in the middle of it. I forgot how many shooting days it was. 79. Only 79 shooting days. It's not so bad. But it was only an 85-page script, you know.
When Mel directs, he performs. He's like, if you watch him behind the monitors, he's saying the lines and he's acting the part himself.
And he comes up here and he's gonna start whipping him with this thing.
E cominciano a picchiarlo con queste cose.
So he's waiting for the go, and the guy says, "Okay, hit him."
Ok, colpitelo.
Whack! Oh, it's awful. It's really messy. Okay, cut. We're moving on this real fast.
And he'll do, take 6, take 7, and he'll keep acting it out every time. So by the end of the day, he's physically exhausted. It's like he was performing.
He doesn't talk a lot, Mel. He's more, he moves a lot. It's like if he want to tell you how to do things more with his body, the way how he moves, than the way how he talks. There is this thing that's almost animal about him, and instinctive, which is very interesting. He can feel things really quick. And this is very important, for a director.
I said, don't explain it to me, just show me. You're a brilliant actor, show me. And he goes, well, it's like this. Got it. I know exactly what he wants.
A lot of energy goes into that. It's just at the end of any given day, I'm drained, just from moving, just the movement that's involved. But I have to keep my heart beating. And so it's a very physical and emotional experience for me to try and realize it and have it happen and create an environment for them where it can happen and not dictate too heavily, because quite often, you can overdo it, and you just have to stand back sometimes to just let stuff happen.
Cut. Okay. Cut. Out of here. Isn't that the worst?
He was always goofing around. He was he always, has a great joke or story to tell. If he doesn't have a joke to get everyone in a good mood, he breaks out the clown nose and sticks it on, and all of a sudden you get Chucko the Clown in front of you.
Further to the left. Further to the left.
I don't think he's ever gone and done a movie without that thing popping up someplace. But he didn't put any snake in anyone's bed. He didn't, no rats down any girls' dresses. I don't recall one. Oh, wait, there was a mouse. We did. We put whose was that?
No, ho sentito un pelucchio!
Oh, that's awful. I needed a clown. I needed a jester to kind of hang around me and keep me yucking it up, because some days I always went in there bleak. Because, you think you're just making a mistake the whole time. You spend almost 5 months kind of making a film, and the whole time you're shooting it, you're not sure whether it's going to work, and you kind of, you think, am I the biggest idiot in the world? All right, I'll just keep going. I've started now, I might as well push the arrow through, But then it doesn't pay to be too self-confident either, Sometimes you're really cocky and you're like, yeah, boy, that works, yeah, that works. And then other times it's like totally like, biting your fingernails at night thinking, I'm doing everything wrong. So those are the checks and balances we give ourselves. And those are the little demons coming into you saying, you're not doing this right. You're going to fail. You'll never make it. The little voices that come out of the woodwork in the hallway. A lot of that going on. A lot of interference. A lot of interference.
Okay. Hey, the kid's plastic. The kid's made of plastic. What? Merry Christmas.
For them, not a good move commercially. Whenever you approach a film about religion, particularly this story, there's always a big hubbub around. Somebody's mad at you for this story.
This movie will be being watched in 100 years from now. A good job if we get inspired and do the best we can do that. In 100 years from now, this movie will still be here. And we were sure of that. That's the only thing we were sure of. And we'll have to wait for 100 years to find out if we were right.
You can't help working on something like this without it affecting you in some way. You spend every waking hour thinking about this, looking at it, dwelling on it, assimilating facts, separating fact from fiction, trying to find the reality of it. And just literally, it's like a meditation, and it's gone on for, wow, it's over a year now. It's like, it's like 15 months of just flat out kind of like meditation on this, just this one short day, or long day for, it's a pretty long day. At the end of the day, a film just makes itself. And you can only do what you can do to make it happen. So until I see it all slapped together, I really don't know what I've got. It invades every part of your psyche, every waking hour, even in your sleep. Ask any director who directs. Their film comes into their dreams. It's been like that with this too.
Rexes tu?
Of humanity, about how we didn't understand anything in thousands and thousands of years. We are keep killing the best of us, the youngest of us, the best of us.
Movie for everybody, because it is a violent movie against violence.
Mel uses the violence to show the truth, and the violence in this film is necessary.
The reality of crucifixion and scourging and all these things is, it's a harsh reality. In the making of something like this, you'll often realize, just as you put it together, that, well, that's too much. No normal audience will be able to stand this much. So you have to know where to pull back a little. I've given you some escapes. I've made it lyrical. I've given you ways to escape so that it isn't too much. Otherwise, people would be running out screaming. But that's my job as a filmmaker, to make it bearable, just bearable. However, even with that, I want to push you over the edge. I want to push you right over the edge. And if you can stay there and hang out with it, you'll get to a higher plane of something through the pain.
It's not really something you can just talk about. It has to live with you for a while. And then I think it's going to be that way with most people that walk out of the theater. I was so proud to be a part of it, and it'll never go away.
You know, I think the movie that we ended up with is probably much better than we set out to make, and I think that's due to the enthusiasm by the collection of filmmakers that came to the project. Everybody that worked on the film has a piece of this movie in their hearts, and always will. It's affected everybody in their own spiritual life. That effort has created what we have.
What I wanted to accomplish with it, I think I did. And that's to provide not a filming experience for people, but an experience for people. It just happens to be on film.
I don't know if this will ever happen again, to make a film like this. People come up to me all the time and say, "Oh, you did that Passion movie. I heard it's very controversial." My answer to them is, yes, Jesus Christ is very controversial. And they killed him for it. Mel Gibson is. But not as a guy who hates any race or any form of any race. He's not.
That's what art is, and that's what making art is about. It's about sort of throwing it all out there. I'm no expert. You know, you can only put your own experience into your work. You're dealing with very powerful stuff here. The truth is powerful stuff. I've shown it in a way that I think is kind of original. What can I say? I think it's made me better. I just had to do what was true to me and true to the Gospels. Gospels are for everybody, from the smallest child to the wisest sage, and I fall somewhere in the middle.